you cannot be both emotional and functional at the same time.
Okay, I'm feeling it right now. This is like, I didn't hear back like I thought I would by now, or I don't think it's just like I'm either strong or I'm vulnerable.
When you're alone and you have time on your hands and you're just sitting there, there's thoughts that go through, right? And those thoughts, once they start to take control of your mind, there is very hardly ways to control it unless you either go through it or you distract yourself.
So why didn't the girls break up with those? And my theory is that there's a difference between what you're attracted to and what you like.
Diet was huge, but definitely anxiety had way bigger of a role on the stomach aches than I wanted to admit. That was a thing too. I tried to push it away where it's like, no, it's not anxiety. There's no way this is affecting my stomach. And I just went down the YouTube rabbit hole of searching and researching and figuring out that, oh, okay, there's a real thing here. The most attractive thing is when a guy, I'm not really attracted to a guy that's crying all the time. I'll be honest about that.
Oh, it's so unfair, babe. What are we gonna do? Like, how can we take care of our daughter?
And your boss gets a call and like, hey, I broke up with my girlfriend. I'm like really sad today. You'd be like, the f*** you talking about? Get your ass to work.
I would see that. Doesn't mean I think any less of them when they're vulnerable. I don't think they're weak, but I do think we've got a little extra annoying hormones that just take you places sometimes.
Welcome to Unattainable. Glad to have you with us and hope you'll continue to be a part of our family for the foreseeable future. And if so, please hit that subscribe button. I'm Mohammed Malay with my incredible co-host, Zach Evans, and our amazing guest of the day, Haley J.
Hello. I don't know where to look.
That one's your camera.
Oh.
That one is all three of us. That one is just me and Zach. And then the live ones are just taking us all.
So much happening. Well, thank you for having me, guys.
Absolutely. Introduce yourself, please. How old you are, where you're from, what you're doing in LA, so on and so forth.
I am Haley J. I just turned 30 at the end of May. I'm from Ocala, Florida, and I moved to LA for the reason I think we all do, just to chase the dream. And I kind of felt like I was living on autopilot in Florida, and I just didn't want to wake up and be 50 years old without knowing how it happened. So I realized that kind of now or never, you got to do it. And it was the best decision I ever made.
Happy for you.
Thank you.
What do you do now?
So I work, it's so funny. It's not a career path I would have thought I would have been in, but I actually work for a company called Live Play Bingo, and it's a gaming bingo app, and it's just such a great community of people. Like, I've never had a job where I feel so close to multiple of my bosses, my coworkers. It's just a really cool space to be in, and it's not so much about just the game of bingo, but we really are connecting with the players. So for me, I'm a mental health girl, everything, it has to be intentional. So I really do feel like I'm fulfilling a purpose by working in the game. And then I do some other gigs with a company called Fashion Go, where I host fashion live videos with wholesale vendors, and kind of just in that hosting space. And I have a podcast now of my own.
I know.
So that's been good.
I know.
Yeah.
So we'll get to that. But the bingo thing, I've always been very curious about. How does that work exactly? Because I see it, like, you post stuff.
Yeah. So it's a 24/7 game where you can just go on and play bingo essentially. And then we have hosts that we trade off every 1 to 2 hours. We'll trade off, and I'm there throughout the day. I start at 1, I go till 7, and then I'm on for 4 hours of the day. And it's just a community where you can play at all hours of the day. We have a whole team in the UK as well. And a friend of mine showed me about the opportunity. It was right after the pandemic, or in the pandemic actually. And I was nannying, and in this place where I felt really lucky to be working, but I was not happy at all. And my friend told me about this job, and the first thing I thought was, I saw her audition tape and she was talking so fast, and I thought it would just look like too much going on, like really stressful. And I started responding to her, and I'm like, no, I don't think that's for me. And I caught myself typing, realizing that I was only saying no because I thought I wasn't going to be good at it. And I'd been looking for a way into the hosting world, and this was an opportunity right in front of me. Right. So 2.5 years later almost, turns out I'm really good, and I'm happy I went for it.
I think one of the first conversations you and I had was with regards to the career path that you were trying to follow, and it was sort of the journalism and
I thought very much like I'm sure a lot of women here in LA, I thought I wanted to do the e-news kind of route and do more like celebrity stuff and
entertainment.
Yeah, and no shade to anyone because that stuff is fun. I love it. But at the same time, I just didn't feel a purpose in it. And especially going to the red carpets, I was fortunate enough to be able to do some of those events. But it's not what people would think because most people want to do those gigs. A lot of the early hosts are not paid. So I had a bunch of friends from Florida thinking I'm talking to celebrities and I'm killing it. And I'm like, little do you know, I'm not getting paid for any of this. It's actually really stressful because you're just kind of thrown into it. A lot of times you're not prepped. You get called in for an event that same night. So you're trying to be authentic and talk to these actors or actresses. And on one hand, you're kind of nervous because they're cool people. And then on the other hand, you don't want to look like an idiot because you're clearly not prepared. But there's only so much preparation you can have when you only have, a few hours to go. Yeah. So I was like, this looks cool, but I just kind of felt like another blonde on a carpet. I didn't feel any real connection. And that's when I knew it just wasn't what I wanted.
Well, I think a big part of it is if you do something where you don't think you're personally adding value, not just to other people's lives, but also yourselves. Right. Then that's where you realize, okay, I might have to change what I'm doing. So, which brings me to this question. When you're hosting the bingo show, what is it that you think you're bringing to the table?
So it's really sad, but there are so many players that are really vocal about how just they're struggling and they deal with anxiety and depression. I have players all the time that tell me, I'm having a panic attack. And that's when I say, okay, please get off the game for a second, catch your breath. It's just a lot of people are not in a good place and they might not have a community that they can turn to in their real life. So this game is everything to them. And I will incorporate my own personality, I guess, into my sets by I'll relate real life analogies, I guess, to the game where I'll say, maybe we're not doing so well in this round or you didn't get a bingo, but just like life, some days are harder, some days you win, some days you lose, you got to come back to it. So I just try and put those little nuggets into it. And a lot of times, and I tell the players this too, I say it out loud so I can hear it back to myself because I think that's one thing I've learned. It's never just like a clear path of learning and then you're good to go. It's just an everyday practice. So saying it out loud really helps me too. And I can feel that connection and then they'll message me and tell me things about their life. And that's when I got more into the mental health videos and things like that. So yeah, it's just that connection that's so much more beyond just hitting bingo numbers for me.
So the game, how many users do you guys have?
It's hard to tell. It changes all the time. It goes up from, I think, like in each set, because we have different rooms that are going on all the time, but I'd say like an average would be like a little over 1,000 at a time. Oh, wow. And it's a newer game. It's 3 years old now, so it's constantly growing. We're learning every day, evolving, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't. But yeah, there's no real way of knowing what's gonna last, especially in this industry. But I kind of live by I'm sure you guys have heard Jim Carrey's dad told him this, where he's like, you could get fired from doing any job. I've seen my dad work in a so-called safe job and get let go too. So I know I have to pursue what makes me happy, and I don't really have a 5-year plan. I'm just trying to go every single day, doing the best I can and trusting that the right opportunities will come if I just do that, basically.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I feel like do you have a 5-year plan?
Kind of. I more take like a couple months at a time, but yeah, I have a general schema of like how I want my life.
I have goals. I guess I've just let go of the I can't say that word. Specificity.
Specificity, yeah.
Is that it? I guess I've just let go of those little details of exactly how it's supposed to look and more, the typical focus on the manifesting, the feeling of it. That's what I'm going for these days. Interesting.
The whole bingo thing is just fascinating to me.
I know.
Because there is like there's a lot of different games out there, obviously, but the first time I saw that, I was like, people are like playing bingo online.
Oh, they love it.
Is it mostly old people? Isn't bingo
It's a
an old
mix.
person
We've
game?
got some. That's like the cliche
Right.
thing, actually.
That's what you would think. It's like
Yeah.
old people's homes.
Or like
No,
kids, maybe,
it's
like,
such a
you know,
mix. There's
children.
some younger kids. There are a lot of women that I would say they're like 40s, 50s, and then some older women. But yeah, it's really we've got some players that are like nanny to this amount of kids type thing. But for the most part, it's really all over the board.
So why does bingo specifically draw people with mental health issues?
I don't think it is just bingo specifically, because this is the only game that I've been in. I'm sure there's a lot of other games. I think any platform that allows you, I think that's the difference with our bingo game. It's because they're a live host. You can really talk to the person. So any platform where you can go interact with a person live and have the opportunity to do that 24/7 whenever you need someone, it's a form of connection. So I think that is naturally going to draw out a lot of people that maybe don't get that in their everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I would probably say is the difference there.
When you say talk to people, does that mean
So we have a chat. Like we're
the
live
chat. Okay,
hosting.
right.
There's a chat. So yeah, there's a chat going on as they're playing
but
bingo.
there's no phone calls coming in?
No, we're
Okay.
not talking or like seeing them face to face or
Right.
anything. But I mean, I do end up seeing a lot of them on Instagram, and I kind of had to set up boundaries just for my own mental health, where because I am openly always talking about, like I do my mental health videos and stuff, I'm open about that. But I do find a lot of people come to me with their problems, and I used to try and answer everyone, and then I was like, I am drowning and I can't do this. So for my own
Sanity.
protection, I kind of had to put up those walls.
I
Yeah.
thought you meant like dudes sliding in.
Oh, no, I mean, we got some interesting people sometimes, but it's a lot of women mainly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you get your inspiration when you put out those mental health videos? First of all, I love them.
Thank
So
you.
it's
Thank
like-
you for watching. I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
every time you post one, I'm like, nice.
Every
Good
time
one.
I feel like no one's watching, I'll get this random message of someone that they tell me really resonated with them, and that's that's cheesy if it helps one person, but it's why I do it.
Yeah.
But where I get inspiration is just living my life. It's always an actual situation I'm going through that I realize, oh, okay, this is what I did this time, and I'm going to share that little nugget. So I just have so many videos in my phone where I don't have a schedule. Like I video record on Monday. I'll just, whenever I naturally have something, I'll write down a note. I'll keep a little notepad of ideas, and then I'll just record them as they come up.
Interesting. Do you also go to therapy on a regular basis?
Well, I just got back into it. Actually, I was having some fun insurance issues, but I did just reconnect with a therapist and see her once every like 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's a fun insurance
Just
issue?
my insurance that could.
Like health insurance?
Well, it's going to sound funny when I say this. I had a bunch of therapists quit on me, and not because of that, but they got, like, this girl's crazy. They got new jobs. So they're just like, oh, we're going to connect you with someone else, but I'm actually leaving this practice. And then I just kind of had to wait to find someone else. And then I finally matched with someone that took my insurance. So just that. But
There was a moment a couple years ago where I thought to myself that you're going through a lot. And I wasn't particularly sure, obviously, what it was. We hadn't talked or anything, but it seems like you got out of it on the better side.
oh, yeah. At first I was like, I wonder what he's talking about. I know. You want to know?
Sure, yeah.
So I, for about 4 years, had terrible stomach pain, like all the time. And there was a lot of factors. One, I did go through an eating disorder. So there was a time where I was just too thin. I was not nourishing my body. And then I found out I had celiac, which I should have done that testing a long time ago.
What is celiac?
When gluten allergy.
Got it.
Typical LA blonde girl. It's a real thing. But yeah, I was just in pain all the time. So that really affected me living my life socially. It was on my mind every single time I would do anything. I really couldn't ever relax. And that naturally built up a lot of anxiety. And most of the anxiety came from thinking I was making it up. I was just like, I know there's something wrong, but I wasn't finding any answers. And I did the whole eliminate this food, eliminate that food. And ironically enough, I never really tried the whole eliminate gluten.
Right.
And I was just like, am I crazy? Like, am I making this up? And the anxiety just went through the roof that I'd never experienced before. And then that's really what led me to getting so interested in it. And then I think you know this too. If not, my mom, she recently passed. It'll be 6 months soon of Alzheimer's, but that had been like a 10-year journey. So
I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't know
thank you. Her experience just with Alzheimer's, even though it's very different, like mental health on the spectrum, it really got me interested in just how the brain works. And they still don't know what causes Alzheimer's. They still don't have a cure, but it just, I don't know. I have a lot of theories where I think I have similar just biological patterns that my mom did. And I'm so curious if she had more anxiety than I knew as a child. She got sick when I was like a sophomore in high school. So I was very much doing my own thing. I wanted to be with my friends. I was in my own world. So I feel like there's a lot I probably missed about maybe some signs that could have been obvious that I would see now as an adult. But I really think her journey saved me in a way, because I think I could have gone down that same path. So I really consider my stomach issues a really lucky warning that it was in a way smaller capacity than a way bigger health problem. And that journey led me into obviously getting testing. I don't eat gluten anymore. So I feel, turns out you feel better when you don't eat what you're allergic to. But I just also realized there was a huge correlation between your brain and your gut, basically, which everyone's talking about the microbiome now and things like that. But it was just such a fascinating thing to me, that link between your brain and your body, and even more so like the spiritual connection, all three of it. So yeah, that was just it was a long journey. It took me a really long time, and I still have days where I'm working on it more than others, but it was a low point for sure. And then I'm very happy that I got out of that.
Would you say that there was anything else aside from you changing your diet that you had to go through and like do in order to get out of it? Or was that like the main factor?
Diet was huge, but definitely anxiety had way bigger of a role on the stomach aches than I wanted to admit. That was the thing too. I tried to push it away, where it's like, no, it's not anxiety. There's no way this is affecting my stomach. And I just went down the YouTube rabbit hole of searching and researching and figuring out that, oh, okay, there's a real thing here. Right. And I was very resistant to any medication, which I had to question in myself, because if anyone said I need some medication, I'd be like, you know what, I would definitely recommend trying natural things first. But if you still feel like you need something, you got to do what works best for you. So I was like, why am I being the ultimate hypocrite where I didn't want to have it? And I got into yoga. Yoga really helped calm me down. Yoga is the first time I ever found exercise that I loved, that I didn't resent, where I'm like, this is my shit. Hot yoga specifically. Uh-huh. But I got into yoga, meditation, like all the typical things, but I was still having some issues, mainly in the mornings. Like my anxiety was different, where it wasn't, I never really had trouble sleeping, but I would just wake up always kind of with this like rushed mentality. And it was just something I had to really think about, where I'm like, what am I so afraid of? Why do I feel like I have to? And I just told you I'm always on time, but I realized I was causing myself a lot more stress than needed to be there. So and that's something I still work on today, but I just kind of had to sit with it and really go through the work of trying to identify whatever that fear is that makes me feel like I have to be so go, go, go. And I also recognize my mom was like that. So, not to blame her, but I do see that those are some like characteristics I picked up from her too.
Sure.
But yeah, it was just it was a very big mix of really not being mad at myself, because for a long time with the anxiety, I was like, why is it sabotaging me? And I had a great therapist that did this exercise with me, where she had me sit. I happened to be at my break on work, so I was in my car at the time, but the idea is you sit in one chair and you talk to the next chair like it's your anxiety, like you separate it from yourself. And then she's like, what would you say to it? And for someone that always has something to say, I was speechless. I didn't know. I just felt so like, whoa, I don't even know what I'm feeling. So that was a really good exercise, and just constantly trying to remember that we have 10 million thoughts, and you are not every thought you have, and you kind of have to choose what you focus on. So did I answer your question? I feel like
you did answer. No. You answered me very well. I just could hear his thoughts sitting next to me. I think his mind is about to blow up.
So, and then I did get on medication too. I take a very low dose, and I go back and forth with being like, I actually think because technically on the clinical studies, the amount I take doesn't even show up. So I'm like, it's probably placebo, but I'm not rushing anything, but I would like to not have to take it at some point. But
So you're taking what?
it's Zoloft, but it's like the knockoff version. It's called Sertraline.
Got it.
So I take 25 milligrams of that, and I found that helped. But yeah, I think it's just, we'll see. I'm, like I said, one day at a time. I'm not setting like I want to be off in 6 months. We'll see. So all those things combined. Go ahead.
So is therapy supposed to be? Because I've never been to therapy. Well, I did once, but that's a long story.
Oh Jesus, that's not therapy. You can't qualify something as therapy when the person you went to is not a therapist.
It was energy healer.
Okay.
And it was my ex's energy healer. It wasn't for me. But that's a long story. But so my dad's super old school, right? Very much like, hey, if something's wrong in your life, man up, fix the problem. Don't worry about, your feelings, stuff like that. And I get it for girls. I think it's different for girls because you guys literally have more hormones and emotions,
super
going
cool,
on.
right? Yeah.
Like I don't know what it's like to fathom what it's like to be a girl. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just like you couldn't. Actually, it was interesting. They did a study on female bodybuilders. There was like this documentary I saw. And at one part, they give them like male level testosterone injections. And then they interviewed them like a week later. And all the girls were like, all I thought about all day was because they're on this testosterone. Like they just woke up, they just walk out the door, sex. Like they're just like crazy. Like,
I'm going to have to get
crazy.
that title from you. I'm interested in watching that. That sounds
cool.
Yeah.
But like after that documentary, it made me realize that like, okay, I don't understand what a girl's going through because you guys have like way different hormones than we do. You know what I mean? But I just feel like for guys, I think mental health is overdiagnosed.
Can you elaborate? What do you mean?
I think a lot of times instead of fixing the problem, it just makes you feel better about the problem that still exists.
So putting a Band-Aid, not really diving in? Okay.
And hey, if you want to use a Band-Aid is a useful tool. You scrape your arm, like put the Band-Aid on, but also like stop scraping your arm. You know what I mean?
The wound is still deep, yeah.
Yeah, like you had like the celiac thing and then like, oh, well now I don't eat gluten. Like that's like a way to solve the problem. Whereas I feel like a lot of times for guys, especially like nowadays, because everybody's been raised in this culture of like, oh, you got last place in the basketball tournament and you're crying. Like, oh, here's a trophy. You're great just the way you are. Feel better about being in last place. But then when you get last place in real life and you get fired, now all of a sudden it's like this huge stress and you don't know how to deal with it because you've never had to deal with like any trauma. You know what I'm saying?
I see that. Well, I actually feel bad for guys because I think it's a lot more societally accepted that women can express their feelings, but a lot of times guys are meant to feel weak. And I personally think the most attractive thing is when a guy, I'm not really attracted to a guy that's crying all the time. I'll be honest about that. But someone that can own how they really feel is so much more attractive than someone that's like, yeah, I'm good all the time, because that's just, you're a human being. Yeah, we have different hormones, but I think it's so much more admirable for someone to say, yeah, I'm struggling right now, versus pretending like everything's perfect, because that's just not real.
I was having a conversation with a girl last night who said, I don't know why, but I really want to see you vulnerable. And I said,
it's strength.
And I said, there's a difference between what women say they want and what they actually want. And you do not want to see me vulnerable. And she was like, you know what? Now that I think about it, I don't want to see you vulnerable.
I don't know. I think there's like complaining, and sometimes a guy might think that's being vulnerable. There's like a poor me, but then there's also like, hey, this is how I'm feeling. I don't know what's going on with my head right now, but I just want to express of where I'm at. To me, that's vulnerability too. But yeah, I think like if you said you don't want to see me vulnerable, what do you think you would show? That's so unappealing.
I mean, the thing is, like, we all have emotions. That's unavoidable. There's no way to suggest that like we just don't have emotions. Majority of people do, and generally speaking, we go through the same things. It's just at the scale that we go through is different, right? So, something that would hurt me emotionally might have to take for me might have to take a lot more to make me upset, as opposed to something that would affect you emotionally and might be a lot less.
You're right.
So when you have conversations with people where they sort of sit there and they're like, oh, like, I can't believe that you're not upset about this. I'm like, because we don't feel the same about this particular thing that you're upset about. And so if I'm sitting there and, you know, something happens to me where then I'm emotionally affected and I'm upset and I'm sad, right? Majority of the time, if the other person in front of me doesn't feel the same, then they're not going to understand me. And I think most of the time men feel like, oh, I can't really be vulnerable. I can't really show that side of me to this person in front of me because they're going to judge me, because we're meant to be strong. And so, and the reality of it is, it's true. You know, if it weren't true, that would be a completely different conversation, but it is true. And after a while, like, if you, he has this thing, he was talking about if a man comes home, he says it better. What is it, that bit about if a guy loses his job?
Yeah, okay, so let's say you're dating a guy, right? He comes home from work, gets laid off from his job, right? Guy A starts crying about it. Oh, it's so unfair, babe. What are we going to do? Like, how can we, like, take care of our daughter? You know, you come home the next day, he's on the couch with a glass of wine, watching reruns of Love is Blind. Babe, blah, 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 blah. My boss is so unfair, right? Like, are you attracted to that guy? Or are you attracted to the guy who comes home like, babe, I'm upset. I lost my job, but I'm going to take my emotions, stuff them deep down in my psyche where they belong, and then man up, wake up at 6 a.m., start the business we've always dreamed of, and make 10 times what we're going to make. You know what I mean?
I think it's neither. I'm not attracted to either of those versions. I'm attracted to the person that says, this situation happened. I'm feeling a little lost right now. I am struggling, but I'm going to do everything in my power to make a change. So someone that's honest about, this is definitely not ideal. This is a hard thing to deal with, but I'm not going to sit on my ass and cry either. And I'm not going to pretend like this doesn't faze me. It's just balancing out both of those things you said, where it doesn't have to be one extreme or the other. It's just like, this sucks, but we can cuss, right?
Yes.
Okay. It's like, this is a really situation, but I'm going to do everything I can to figure it out. That might be fixed next week. It might take 2 months, but if I'm with a person, I'm in it with them. And as long as they're trying, that's what I'm attracted to.
It's funny because we had another guest who essentially said the same thing as you did. But you know, the bottom line is men just don't see things that way. And sometimes, here's the thing, which is very interesting to me, that I think this is the part where women don't really understand, is that in order for us to go through an emotional state, there is a process that you cannot be both emotional and functional at the same time. And the issue is that women think that you could be both. And that's why when you say, like, you know, I would like it to be the middle ground. But a person who is highly functional doesn't have the time or capacity to process the emotions in the way that the woman would expect.
I think it goes up and down, where I think it's like, you know, you can have a streak of I'm applying to new jobs, I'm doing all these things, but then maybe nighttime comes and you're like, okay, I'm feeling it right now. This is like, I didn't hear back like I thought I would by now. Or I don't think it's just like I'm either strong or I'm vulnerable. I think it's, which actually I'll go back to that too, because I think being vulnerable can be showing strength. But I think it's like an up and down, where throughout that process, you can feel both things, just maybe not at the same time.
Well, it's not at the same time, but also you just can't really afford to sit there and be emotional and allow those doors to open is really what it is. You know, because it's like when you sit down and if something happens, okay, and I go through a breakup, somebody passes away, whatever the case is, the reality of the situation is that when you're alone and you have time on your hands and you're just sitting there, there's thoughts that go through, right? And those thoughts, once they start to take control of your mind, there is, very hardly ways to control it unless you either go through it or you distract yourself. Right? That's why when somebody says, hey, like you're having a hard time, distract yourself and like go outside, go do this, go do that, right? Because your mind starts thinking about other things, doesn't focus on that one thing that you're upset about or being emotional about, right? So men, unfortunately, the way that society is set up, we just don't have the ability to sit there and just be emotional at all times, or even as much as women do, because we have responsibilities or things we got to take care of. And not to say that women don't, but it's been accepted that if a woman is feeling this way, X, Y, and Z, then, you know, this is what you're going through. I understand, you know, you're validated. But if that happens to a man and your boss gets a call and like, hey, like, you know, I broke up with my girlfriend, like, you know, I'm like really sad today. He'd be like, the f*** you talking about? Get your ass to work.
I would see that.
What are you, stupid?
Yeah.
What? You know?
Yeah. And that's why I do feel bad for men, because I don't think that's fair. And I think you guys have been taught that you're supposed to push down your feelings because of that judgment. Because you're right, your boss would probably look at you like, all right, get the fuck over it. You have a job to do. But
it's not even the judgment of it. It's just like, but you know, the issue is, we were having a conversation about this the other day, which I was like, some of these things that are now happening, it's like the society is trying to tell you that like this is how you should live your life, but in reality we've got no problem living this way. The only time that there is a problem is when somebody comes up to me, my girlfriend, my wife, whoever that I'm with, my partner comes up to me and goes, hey, so like why aren't you this? And it's like, I'm good, I'm chilling, I've got no problems. You know?
And does she say that, like, in this situation, would she say that because she wants you to show her a different type of emotion?
Supposedly, yeah. You know, it's the expectation that, like, oh, I'm not getting this from you. And, you know, I want you to open up and I want you to show me this side of you that I have, right? So she has this side, and so she wants to relate. And now all of a sudden it's like, why don't you have this?
Yeah.
I can't relate if you don't have this. And it's like, you can't relate because you can't relate. It's got nothing to do with me. It's not a me problem. It's a you problem.
Yeah. I get what you're saying. I think there, on one hand, if you've been with someone and you are this way and they've always known that, you can't just suddenly be like, where's this side? If you met someone and they've never had it, and that's one thing. Sometimes I maybe would get confused in any relationships if I'd like seen it before and then I don't see it, then I'd be like, I know this is here, so like something feels off in this moment. But yeah, I see what you mean, where sometimes people just are the way they are and it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with that. But I think not all guys are the same either. Some could be way more emotional than the other.
100%. Yeah, 100%. That's when it's acceptable. It should be acceptable, which is like if a guy is very emotional and, you know, they come out and something happens and they start crying, you know, whatever the case is, and you're like, okay, sure.
And when you said you're expected to be strong, I definitely agree that the male is typically looked at as the strong one, but any man in my life, family, partner, whatever it is, yeah, I expect them to have strength, but it doesn't mean I think any less of them when they're vulnerable. I don't think they're weak. I think if anything, they trust me by showing me what they're going through in that time. I don't think that moment defines them as strong or not.
Here's what makes me nervous about that. So I like to read between the lines when people talk. I can tell, because just living in LA this long, you tell, oh, people think one thing, they're actually the other way, blah, 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 blah. Whenever I talk to girls about their exes, right? There's two types of exes. They're the ones the girls broke up with. And it's always, he was such a great guy. Anybody would be lucky to have him. My mom loves him. He checks all the boxes, and they'll have some weird thing in their head. I outgrew him. Or like, we lost the connection, like something that's very nebulous, right? And the other type of the ex is the one that broke her heart. And it's always, he's a sociopath. Which I don't think they're all sociopaths. Sociopaths is like 1% of the population. Every single girl in LA, every single one of the exes they hate is the narcissist sociopath.
I was
right?
dating a narcissist sociopath. Yeah.
Yeah. So me using my like, skills of deduction, I'm like, every time the girls, and you can tell by the way that they talk about them that they were like head over heels in love with these guys, right? So then my brain is going, okay, all these guys that girls say they like because they're nice and they show their emotions and stuff like that, they always break up with those guys. But all the guys that were sociopaths, it's always the guys breaking the girl's heart. So why didn't the girls break up with those? And my theory is that there's a difference between what you're attracted to and what you like. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes and no. I'm in a unique situation where I'm actually in my first real adult relationship. So I don't have any exes that I'm like, I've actually never had a situationship, or, well, I've had like, relationship type things, but never like as serious as it is now. But I've never had anyone in my past where I'm like, I hate that person. Like, I'm even still cool with my high school boyfriend. So I really haven't had any terrible burn bridges. This is the worst. So I don't know about that one, to be honest.
How long have you guys been together?
Almost 6 months.
Okay, so it's fairly new. So up until pretty much up until you were 30,
Yeah.
you did not have it. So why is that?
It's funny. I've always been different in that way, where I would make connections with people, but a lot of times I think I chased the unattainable guy, where it was like, oh, we're cool, but there was never that.
Pun intended.
Oh, but that, yeah, I didn't even do that on purpose. But there was never a conversation like, what are we going to be? Because either I knew they weren't right, or it wasn't a good guy that I could really trust. And I don't know why that was something I did, but it was just, I just never was the girl that wanted to have a boyfriend to say I had a boyfriend. I would much rather be alone than be with someone I don't think I'm supposed to be with. And then it just changed for the first time recently, and I went with it.
Okay, so what would you say is the qualities that you wanted versus the qualities that he has versus the negative traits that he possesses that you're okay with? I would assume 6 months is still a very early timeline.
I think for the just like his own protection, I'll talk about maybe past situationships, just to not talk about this current one, just because I don't, want to put all like his personal stuff out there. But
well, I guess the main question is what qualities are you looking for?
Qualities I look for is someone that supports me, is not threatened by me wanting to be my own person. That whole thing about you should have your other half. I'm like, well, what happens if something goes wrong? Are you a half of a person? I never liked that. This is my better half or other half. I want someone to compliment me and add to me. But it's still something I find that I'm learning too, because sometimes I think I am super independent, and then I realize, oh, maybe I'm a little bit more codependent than I thought. And it takes some situations to realize that, and then just like remember, like, I am that and I can be by myself and trust. And I think in just past relationships, I was always attracted to confidence for sure, and still am. I'm attracted to someone, and it doesn't really matter what their job is or label, but someone that believes in themselves, someone that has drive, someone that knows how good they are without being cocky type thing.
Is that crazy? That's crazy to me.
What?
It comes up a lot. One of those traits that you just said. Confidence, but not being too cocky.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, because I think you can be confident
enough.
without being. It's not even cocky though. I think there are some people that are like, I'm the best in the world, where I don't like that. I like people that are like, I'm really good at what I do, but I know that there's always something to learn. I know there's always a way I can improve, and there will always be someone that I want to learn from. Sure. So I think that balance of both those things.
So essentially, it's somebody who recognizes that they have great qualities, but also still willing to grow.
Yeah, I mean, it's how I feel about myself with hosting, where I think I'm a damn good host, but can I always improve? Yeah.
Interesting. So would you say that you're more submissive, dominant, or somewhere in between?
Submissive.
Okay. Has that changed at all since you were younger?
I don't think so. I realized that ever since I was a kid, even in friendships, like with girls, I hate fighting with people. I have a pit in my stomach every time. I absolutely hate it. My mind goes
confrontation.
No, my mind goes to for someone that studied communications, you'd think I'd be a little bit better at talking, but my mind just goes to the worst places where I'm like, they hate me. I said the wrong thing. And then that was something I still work on today, trying to find that balance of saying what I want to say, but not being too pushy, but not holding back. That's like a fine dance that I feel like I do in all types of relationships. But yeah, I don't like when people are upset with me at all. I'm not good at being like, I don't give a fuck what they think. I very much give a fuck what they think.
What do you do?
What do I do?
Yeah. So what is your response when somebody is upset with you?
Oh, I typically spiral, and then I try and just like get my thoughts clear. I'm a big writer. So the biggest thing with communication for me is I always want it to come off the way I want it to come off. And I'm so afraid that my words will just get all jumbled. And I'm like, wait, that's not what I meant. So I try to write it down, and I will either like send it in a voice message. Sometimes I'll even read it just to make sure like it's clear in my head. But I think I just get so nervous that I get terrified of losing the relationship that I just don't want anything to go wrong. But then I also realize the right person and the right partner is going to realize that you're not always going to get it right. And you're not always going to say it right. And that's a part of it.
So a method that I like to tell people to use is, which is very similar, but ultimately when you're extremely emotional, write down every single thought that you have at that very moment, and then give it 24 hours, read back what you wrote down, and 9 out of 10 times you'd be able to weed out what was said that was an emotional response and what still is true.
I like that.
And then you go through and revise it, and then you reach out. And
that reminds me of my truth versus... It's like, what is the fear versus what is true? You write down what you're afraid of, and then you're like, is that actually true?
Right.
But yeah, like you said before, it's very hard to be logical when you're emotional.
Yeah.
And not to pull the female card, but I do think we've got a little extra annoying hormones that just like take you places sometimes.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I would get, I mean, like I said, we have the same emotions. So situations will come up where I would be extremely emotional, upset, and angry, and me and my ex would have this conversation where she'd be like, I don't understand how you're so patient. I'm like, I don't understand how you could like just handle this like that. And I'm like, all you have to do is just like breathe, think about what you're going through, and then think about what I do, what I'm thinking about doing right now if I wasn't feeling this way. If I wasn't so emotional at this very moment. You know, sometimes obviously you don't have that 24 hours, so you have to.
I'm going to say you're really good at being able to kind of fast forward the 24 hours.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like the few days ago, there was a situation that came up. I was like extremely angry and upset. And she was like, can you say something? And I was like, I need a minute to think. And so I just like walked around for a minute, and just allowed those emotions, allowed myself to just be angry, you know, and be extremely upset and understand that I am very upset and very angry. And those feelings are why I'm feeling of being responsive and what's the word? Reactive.
I love that you said that, because that was something I recently just learned where, and I know in this case you knew you were angry, but there's sometimes I just feel emotions and I don't even know really what I'm feeling. A lot of times it's a sadness. There's something I don't want to express, but I'm like, what is it exactly that's so triggering for me? But I realize there's a lot of power in saying, hey, I'm feeling a certain way, even if it's I'm just carrying energy from work, because my natural demeanor is, even though I do have anxiety, I don't think I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I come off as like a, hi guys, like all the time type person. Right. But my job is very go, 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 go. Like you're talking, you're flying, it's so much energy. So naturally, sometimes at the end of the day, it takes me a second to come back to like my own skin. And sometimes I just carry that. So having the power to say, you know what, I'm feeling a little something right now. it has nothing to do with you. Just like, give me a minute. There's a lot of power. And even if you don't know what you're feeling, just say, there's some energy. Give me some time to figure it out, but it has nothing to do with you. And I kind of use that tool from the toolkit when I need it.
Yeah. Do you have any siblings?
The youngest of 4 sisters. My older 2 had a different mom.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Same dad.
So youngest of 4, how far apart are you guys?
The oldest is 14 years older, 11 years older, and 2.5.
So you're closer to the 2.5.
Yeah.
I would assume. Okay. In your upbringing, do you think that affected how you grew up at all? Having a sibling that was, or having 3 siblings that were that much apart, or, you know, any sort of combination of it?
I feel so lucky because I have a really good relationship with all my sisters. So I actually, like, qualities that they have are qualities I've always wanted to have myself, and I feel like I do have. So yeah, it definitely affected me, but in a positive way. And I learned a lot too. And, you know, you can be really catty and show parts of your personality you don't like with family members. But I think when it comes to all this practice of, you know, being aware of how you come off, I think family are the ultimate people you can really practice that with, where you're like, okay, I've done this work to react in these situations. Now, like, this is a real test to see if you can do it with someone that you're so used to just quickly snapping at. Let's try and not do that.
This is a question I like to ask people: is nature or nurture?
Nurture.
Really?
I don't know.
What would be the percent? What would you say is the percentage?
I maybe I'm not understanding the question right. I'm just thinking like the way I was brought up.
Upbringing, yeah.
Yeah, well, my mom
who you
was
are,
very...
who you are today.
Yeah.
Is it as a result of nature or nurture?
My mom was a very, like, there for me, emotional type person. So I would say it was like her nurturing qualities that I feel like have more to do with my upbringing than anything. Why did you think I was going to say nature? It feels like my answer surprised you.
Well, just because in general, I think nurture has probably something to do with 15% to 20%, and the rest would be nature. Yeah.
I think it's the opposite.
Really?
I think nurture is most of it. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, where are you getting these stats from?
Just people in general. I think people. So okay, this is a very good example of it. You have how many siblings? 5?
Yeah.
Okay. So, how would you describe yourself?
Hardworking, ambitious.
How would you describe your siblings?
Yeah, they're all different for sure. But
not as good as me, but
I think that has a lot. There's so many variables to a household. Yeah, okay, we had the same parents, but like I got made fun of way more in school, and because of that, I was like, "F you guys, I'm gonna become super successful, so I can post on my Instagram story my BMW." And I can say, nana, nana, boo, boo, stick your head in doo-doo to all the fucking second graders that made fun of me. You know what I mean?
I'll tell you what the problem with that is. So you have two very significant moments in your life that you experienced that seem to be what you think changed the future course of your life. Okay. Based upon just me knowing you and the conversations we've had.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There are countless people who have had the same exact experiences. And you cannot deny that. Because your experiences aren't that unique.
Yeah.
And if you talk to those people, majority of them are not the way that you are.
Yeah, but that's still nurture, because I had a dad that said, hey, man up and fix the problem. Where maybe their dad said, oh, little Gen Z, are you okay? Let's go ride bird scooters.
Is it nurture, or is it the way that you process the information when you received it?
I don't know. I think it's still a lot nurture. I think it's still a lot the attitude.
But your
that you're brought up
dad
in,
gave that same information to all your siblings.
But they didn't get bullied, really. My class was like meaner.
Sure, but the information is still the same nonetheless. Yeah. Yes, those experiences were a little bit different, but the drive that you have, the way that you function, the way that you see things, the way that you are so disciplined with certain things that you want in life.
I see what you mean. Because it's like, why do some people have the same parents, but they can turn out so drastically different?
I mean, that's me and my brother.
Yeah.
To the T.
A lot of siblings.
We are a year and a half different. So it's not that long. We actually grew up almost as if we were twins because my mom always wanted twins. So we were treated exactly the same. Never anything different. If anything, I would actually think he was treated better than me, to be honest with you. But we're two completely different people. Completely different people.
Yeah, no, I see that.
To a point
actually.
that if you see us, you'd be like, there was no way for me to have even guessed that you guys were siblings and brothers. So, and the same thing goes. Now, here's the thing. With your sibling situation, it's a little bit harder because, you know, the first two are far apart and also have different, or I guess have a different mom. But with your closest sibling, right, I would also assume that you guys are somewhat different.
Yeah.
I have one of my exes, there were 3 siblings, 3 sisters, 3 completely different people. And they grew up pretty much the same for the most part. Maybe the third one not as much, but the first 2 pretty much the same. So it's just nurture, sure, somewhat. And this goes to any person that you could possibly meet and ask about their upbringings. Majority of who they are as a person. And I mean, for me personally, I just growing up, there are stories that my parents tell me that couldn't have possibly been as a result of nurture. I was just too young to even have been able to be exposed to that sort of an experience in order to process it the way that I did as a kid. And like, I was like 3 years old, and my brother, we go to a party and my brother falls asleep. And as we're running out, as my parents are walking out, they pick him up, and I run out and grab his shoes so nobody forgets him.
Aw.
And so that type of equality, you can't, there's no way to teach somebody that at that young of an age. And I've had that sort of equality all my life. It never went away. It never changed. It's just like, it's a part of me. It's who I am as a person. So, and really, like, most of the qualities that I have, I see them as who I was from the very beginning. But then I think my parents sort of emphasized the growth in
Okay, I would agree
different
with
areas.
that. Actually, now that you explained that, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
What do you think hearing that now?
I'm going to destroy your entire argument right now. So why is it, tell me if you guys notice this, right? Typically, in most households, the oldest sibling is the most reserved, right? They're kind of the most like shy. They're the most like, I do good in school. I'm a nerd, blah, 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 blah. Typically, the middle child has more of a chip on their shoulder. They got forgotten about, blah, blah, blah. Nobody pays attention to them. And the youngest child typically is more like a little bit spoiled. Like, their parents kind of went easy on them. Like, a little, like, not as disciplined, but more fun. More like good at partying, blah, blah, blah. Which that would make sense.
Good at partying. Qualities. Good at partying.
10 out of 10 partier. So that would make sense, which typically, you know, parents have kids. At first, they're freaked out. Oh, we have these kids. Like, make sure they don't die. Don't cross the street. And then, like, you know, the youngest one, by the time they're like, oh, yeah, they'll be fine. They're running around the playground. They'll fall off their bike, but they'll be fine.
Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, one, there are a ton of different studies on how children are affected when there is different numbers of kids. So in this particular scenario that you brought up, there was 3 of them. And how each of these children are affected would be different than if it was 2. It would be different if it was 1. And it would be different if it was like 4, and so on and so forth. So in this generalized scenario, it's hard. And that's also another thing, is that even when you do all these studies, what you just said, being that the first child, you would think that would have to come out the way that you said, I'm not that way, and I'm the first child.
Yeah, you're super responsible. What do you mean?
But
and you're horrible at partying. You don't even drink. You literally don't drink. You just sit there on the couch and make sure everybody's doing okay.
But see, that doesn't apply to every single person. So like my ex's sister, there was 3 of them. and she's the eldest.
Yeah.
And she's the complete, I would say she's like the most irresponsible, non-caring, just non-giving a always wants to party type of person there is. And you would think she would have to be extremely responsible considering her upbringing and where she was in the lineup.
But that's so oversimplified. It's like there's so many variables. Of course, there's like 1,000 things that go into it. But do you guys agree in general, typically the oldest child is like, or am I just making this up? Or do you guys see that in like other people?
It's hard because in my older sister's dynamic, the older one is way more like childlike and playful and creative. So it's opposite in that one. And then I would say it's more true in my sister.
How far is your eldest to the third?
So 2.5 years. I'm 30, so my sister will be 33 at the end of November.
So 3 years. So you guys are 14, 40, so 11 years.
She's turned 43. The oldest is 11 years.
Okay, so 11 years apart. And then you said the second one is how far from the first?
From the first is 3, I think. I
3
should know
years?
that better, huh?
You should know that better.
I think 3.
I did that math much quicker than you did.
You did. Oh, well, I'm not going to pretend I'm a math expert. That's one thing about me. Yeah, let's go with 3.
So point is that your eldest essentially pretty much grew up, because up until the time she was 11 years old, there was no third. So,
but then we didn't have the same household.
Right. And you didn't have the same household. Yeah. So your scenario is a little bit more complicated. And I don't think there's a lot more variables that go into it. But the point comes down to the same thing, which is ultimately nature wins over nurture.
How do you explain homeschool kids then?
Explain homeschool kids.
I'm about to destroy your argument again.
Uh-huh.
Every time you meet a homeschool kid. You didn't do it the first time. So I already did, but I'm going to do it again. Every time you meet a homeschool kid, 95% of the time, they're awkward. They don't know how to talk to people. They're like nice people, but like kind of like, you're like, yeah, you're a little like, you don't understand social conventions because you didn't have the nurture of being around. Oh, I'm in study hall.
Yeah.
How do I talk to these kids? Who do I sit by at lunch? Oh, I have my tray. I'm nervous.
Does it have to be one is like 70%, one's 30? Could it be like half and half? And like you said too,
it's definitely not 50-50, but the 20% I would say it does affect that way, which would make sense.
And it is everyone's own, like you said. We could have the same problem, and we could have, like, we're brother and sister. We have the same mom and dad that treat us the same way, and I might interpret it in a completely different way than you do. So that's also a factor, like you were saying.
Here's the thing. I know homeschool kids, and what you're saying does not apply to them.
But 95%. I mean,
I don't know where you're getting this 95% from.
Every time I meet a homeschool person.
Who's the last person you know who's homeschooled?
I don't know. Like,
do you think that could just be a stereotype? Because I know what you mean, where it's like a stereotype, but I don't actually know if I've met a homeschool kid that I would say is like, because you assume they're more reserved and, like you were saying, don't really know how to handle themselves socially. Mm-hmm. I met 2 girls recently that grew up. They weren't homeschooled, but they. I forgot their religion, but they was very, very strict. That's the only time I'd ever met 2 girls. And I'm like, wow, they really, like, this is their first party. Maybe. There's like, they kind of escaped the family type thing. And that was the only time I'm like, this is very much a culture shock for them. But I don't actually know if I have homeschool friends now that I think about it. So maybe it's just more of a stereotype than actual truth.
I knew a homeschool kid who moved to LA. She all of a sudden was exposed to all these things, and she was like going wild. And it's like if it had affected her that way, she wouldn't have really. And that's the thing. Her nature came out.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe she was awkward, but then you're a hot girl in LA. You get invited to 30,000 events a day.
Your nature comes out.
No, it's not your nature comes out. It's now you're in a different environment that nurtures you very fast, because you're getting like if you're a guy and you go out and you're shy, you're just going to be lonely. You know what I mean? Like, nobody's going to come talk to you. You're just like sitting there. You know, if you're a girl and you go out, you're going to have like 10 different guys talk to you. Some girl comes out, oh my God, I love your dress. Oh, do you want a free drink over here? Do you want some champagne? So you get socialized so fast. It's like you know the Dragon Ball Z where they go in the little chamber and it like accelerates their process and they come out and they're like super strong. Mm-hmm. It's like that for girls going to the club.
You're not wrong on that one.
See?
Especially in LA, girls have
destroyed
the upper
your entire
hand.
argument again.
Well, but I still see both sides. I really do. I see both sides.
Okay, here's what we're going to do.
I'm a Gemini. I'm always like half and half.
You're actually a pretty good Gemini for being a Gemini.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I say
yeah.
that. I don't know much about astrology. I feel this Mercury retrograde shit. That's
You'd be
for
the only
but-
LA girl who doesn't.
I like when people tell me what they know.
Yeah.
Yeah, from Florida. I like when people tell me what they know, but I don't really know anything about the typical, like, oh, that's definitely a Pisces. I don't know what that means at all.
Gemini is two-faced liars, I'm pretty sure.
No, more
They're not
like
like
just
that.
really.
Isn't that Gemini? I'm not saying you
You
I'm
have two
saying Gemini.
personalities.
Yeah.
It's just like I like to think that we can wear different hats
Sure.
in different situations.
So I guess maybe you are a Gemini.
Yeah.
You're just more like control and chill and like a good Gemini.
Yeah, I'm like so chill.
I feel like there are stories we have to touch on. But here's what I'm going to do. In the comments, I would like people to put what they think has affected them growing up, nature or nurture. And then
We'll count them up.
we'll
Tally
count them up
We'll
and see.
Yeah.
And see.
Yeah.
All right, last question. Green bubble. Does it matter?
What? Green bubble, does it matter?
And you get a
Does
text.
the green
The
bubble
bubble's
matter?
green.
Oh my gosh, I
Guy
thought we were
texts you.
doing like a blue pill, red pill metaphor just then. I'm like, what does that mean? Does it define someone's personality? No. Can it be annoying? Yeah. But like
Told you.
not
No.
necessarily
Annoying
not
has nothing to do-
necessarily
that's not-
romantic.
that's not good enough.
My aunt has it too, and I'm like, Auntie, get an iPhone.
Like you're not a scammer.
But-
Get
but-
an iPhone.
Yeah. No.
Here's the thing. I'm not a simple person. An iPhone is for simple people.
Okay, so
I'm way too...
so we're offended right now.
I'm just saying, it's just the truth. You know, the reality of it is that people who use Android use it for features that it gives them. And we've used Android for such a long time because it was so much ahead from an iPhone. And you just can't do certain things that I could easily do on an Android. So the reality of it is the multitasking that I need and the quickness that I need, an iPhone is just not going to give me.
I see that. I think
So-
saying simple is a very
No,
generalized.
don't agree. Just don't
But
agree.
the-
Well, no, I
Don't agree
see
with
it
him.
because
But
you
the whole-
you like that phone because your brain works in different ways and you want more bandwidth to do what you want to do.
I know you don't want to hear this, but the reality of it is that the way that Apple designed their phone was to make it as simple as possible for the slowest people to be able to use it.
Simple or efficient?
Simple.
No.
There's nothing efficient about it. Actually, I've used an iPhone, and every single time I use it, I'm like,
It doesn't get a virus.
this is just crazy. My phone doesn't get on virus. What do you think?
I don't
This
know.
is like
My aunt just had to return
1940.
her Android phone because
man.
it has so many problems.
so many problems.
Because she clicks on things. There's a difference. You could do this. Do you know how many iPhone users have gotten hacked? How many girls do you know that have gotten hacked?
hacked, like none.
On
They get
their
their phone
on their
stolen?
Instagrams? How
On
their
Instagram. Yeah,
Instagrams
all
get
the
stolen
time. All the time.
All the time because they click it.
That's
Simple people.
Instagram. That has nothing to do with iPhone or Android.
It's a virus nonetheless.
No. That's not a
What do
virus.
you mean? No, you just saying no doesn't mean anything.
It's not a virus. That's somebody scamming you on Instagram. You could get scammed
I'm
on
sorry.
a laptop.
What's the process exactly? You click on a link and then what happens?
I don't know. I've never been scammed. I'm
Okay, that's
unscammable.
what-
I'm
you
unscammable.
get a virus where then they have access to your phone. That's what that is. And they have iPhones. So you had an iPhone, you clicked on a link, and I'm sorry, you got hacked.
I got hacked through my computer, and that was me being really dumb. So that was me.
Because you clicked on a link. Probably.
It was a fraud thing. They said that my bank was going to be charged, and I had to call a number. And before I knew it,
Oh, God, you got one of
this
those.
was so bad.
You
I
got
was
one
on
of
the
those.
phone. I was on the phone. My bank account is up. I give them permission to my computer, and then as soon as I do that,
Oh,
it hits me,
Jesus.
and I'm like, and then I literally I just switch personality, and I said, get the off. I like got so mad, and then they started acting all weird because I caught on to them, and then thankfully I could go straight to the bank to like shut it down. But I was like, that was dumb of me. But knock on, this is not wood, like this. But Instagram has been okay.
You actually just destroyed his argument in one fell swoop.
Which is what?
Think about it like this. If I'm a scammer, right? Let's say I'm successful scamming an Android person. Scammed him. I got him on the phone. This gave me their password, blah, blah, blah. Then I go in their bank account and there's going to be nothing in it because they're an Android user. There's nothing to steal. Of course they're going to try to steal from iPhone people.
It's crazy you still say that after many times you and I have had this conversation where I said my phone is more expensive than yours.
Because you got scammed. Because you got scammed, bro. You got scammed. If you have that much money, buy an iPhone like an adult.
But what does the Android do that's so incredible that the iPhone doesn't do?
It takes video footage that you can look like World War II footage, but it just does it automatically. It's the default feature.
There's a lot more customization abilities. There's a lot more apps. There's a lot more multitasking features that you could use. There's just a lot more features in general. Mm-hmm. So the fluidity of the way that things work on an Android, and when I say Android, I'm specifically talking about a Samsung phone because there are a lot of different Android phones, but they're not all the same, obviously. So I'm talking about Samsung specifically versus iPhone. Samsung is better, and that's just it. I mean, I'll show you stuff, and you'd be like, "Wow, I didn't even know this was like a thing of a possibility." And
well, maybe I like simple then. If it's simple, I actually prefer to be on my phone a lot less these days. So yeah, right. I don't really want something more complex.
That's my point. That is exactly my point. So, but going back to the green bubble, you said it doesn't define who you would date. So if a guy was like texted you and it was
I'm not going to be like, I will.
Like,
to me, that's the same thing as saying I'm not going to date him because he's Aquarius.
Okay. You know? My God. Thank you so much. Wow. Wow.
Do you do that?
No.
No, that was my point because he wouldn't do that. So that was a very good example. So I appreciate it.
But you don't think the green bubble, okay, it's not like you'd be like deal breaker green bubble, this guy, right? But it'd be like a 1% like.
Well, I said it's annoying. Yeah, it's annoying.
Annoying doesn't qualify.
It fucks up everybody's group chat. You know what I mean?
You're just like, did they get it?
Green?
I just like
you guys
don't
are
know.
Brainwashed. You know the sheep
I don't
thing
know
that
if
you're
I
talking
would
about? That's what it is.
I don't know if I'd make you my emergency contact because I'm like, if I'm in the back of like a sketchy Uber, I'm like, are they gonna know? Did it get delivered? I don't know.
Did it send or
Actually,
not?
recently,
no one knows.
I saw a video on how an iPhone has this feature, which, by the way, Samsung has had for years. How much they paying you?
I know.
You should definitely get sponsored by Samsung. If you click, I think it's 5 times if you click on the power button, or it's like it's one of those. If you're in like a bad situation, you're like an emergency situation, it calls 911 and also sends a message to your emergency contact. But I got to double check on this and see if it actually works or it was like one of these like fake TikTok things. So
yeah, I mean, I think all phones should have that. That's
I know Samsung had it because I used to put my emergency contact in there and set it up that way. But yeah, thanks for coming on to the podcast.
Yeah, no, this was fun.
Amazing.
Thanks for having me, guys.
This was good times.
So fun.
We'll have you again.
Sounds good.
Hopefully soon.
Yeah.
And appreciate you.
Go iPhone.
See you later.